There's a guy who wants to talk to you. Serious?
Some of you may know that Jara White has made a video response to my Radioactive Fallacy video, claiming that I misinterpreted his sources and he felt the need to clarify. I'm not interested in getting into a back and forth with White and being added to his list of opponents. I'm not even interested in moon landing discussions, to tell the truth. But with this video, he's doubled down on some of his errors, and so I'm compelled to say something. Hopefully this won't take too long. I'll start with the smaller points, so this is not going to go along the video chronologically. He concedes that it's possible to get satellites through the Van Allen belts, but says they need to be shielded and turned off, and it's not possible to shield a person enough, and they can't be turned off. That it's not possible to shield enough just isn't the case. Remember, we don't have to block all radiation, just bring the exposure down to safe levels. And the fact is, finely tuned instruments like satellites are actually more sensitive to radiation damage than people are. We're pretty tough. Not to belittle radiation exposure at all, but a certain doses of radiation we can shake off, but a little damage to an electronic device can render it useless quickly. In defending himself from my accusation that he was perhaps wrongfully conflating REM and Roentgen in a quote from Van Allen, he references a Wikipedia article on Roentgen, highlighting a section and saying,
"Firstly, for human flesh, 1 rem is indeed equivalent to 1 Röntgen."
Not caring that the pullout references Roentgen, rads, and gray, not REM, and is also speaking specifically about gamma radiation, not particle radiation. If he had taken the additional step at looking at the listing for REM, he would have seen that REM is the product of the absorbed dose in rads and a weighting factor, which accounts for the effectiveness of the radiation to cause biological damage. REM takes into account what type of radiation the flesh is being exposed to, so it can more accurately predict its effect, so it does have a different meaning. He holds on to the definition that they are about the same to excuse his lazy thinking. He says in my video that I agree with most of his facts but misinterpreted their sources. This isn't true. What I'm actually saying is that even if we take some of his statements as facts, he's making a flawed interpretation of those facts and making flawed assumptions because of it. For example, let's all recognize that he bypassed my main point, which was that he took the range that Van Allen proposed as a maximum radiation level and stated as a fact that the maximum of that maximum is what happened, completely ignoring the fact that the exposure was more likely somewhere in here. Then he adds to his false assumptions by saying,
Secondly, considering that all the Apollo astronauts returned with generally less than 2 rems of radiation, I'd say this conflicts with Dr. James's ranges.
No, it doesn't. You see, Van Allen said the maximum would be from 10 to 100. Maximum. 0 to 10 still exists. Apparently, the maximum was not attained. In my original video, I criticized him for making the false statement that the astronauts had encountered this flood of near-lethal light-speed particles. His defense is, since the Apollo missions were during a similar solar maximum, he can say it was under the special circumstances too. Here he shows that he still does not understand where the flaw in his thinking is, so I guess I have to spell it out better. He is allowed to say that the Apollo missions were under similar circumstances as the 2000 solar maximum. What he is not allowed to say is that since these circumstances occurred, the particles were accelerated to lethal levels. He can say they may have been at lethal levels. He can say it's possible they were at lethal levels, but he can't say they were. Because the scientific position is, under certain circumstances, particles can be accelerated. There is potential. Not under certain circumstances, they are. What he is doing is taking every place where something can or may happen and saying it will and did, and taking the potential maximum and calling it the actual factual. And also, when you're dealing with these type of probabilities, there is a possibility that some particles will be accelerated and some won't, in different locations, at different concentrations. But he made the statement, and still is making the statement, that since it was possible for it to happen, it did happen, and it happened on the mission's path, which he cannot say, and that is where his thinking is flawed. Did you notice that he continues to quote the articles in the late 90s expressing concern that the solar maximum in late 2000 would cause this tremendous surge of dangerous particles in the Van Allen belts, and that it was a greater potential for solar flare activity? This is 2012. Why is he still talking about the potential Van Allen activity and solar flares during the 2000 and early 70s solar max? Instead of what actually happened, was there major solar flare activity during the Apollo missions? Did the Van Allen belt show activity in 2000 that can be directly correlated with the Van Allen conditions during the missions? I'm sure if he had that data, he would show it. Lastly, I'd like to direct this to White, members of the cult of Gerald White, and all the moon landing conspiracy theorists out there. And I do this so you understand why I've done my videos and my point of view. My goal here is not to prove the moon landings happened. That's long since been proven. It's been proven by the fact that every legitimate question has been answered several times. Real inquiries, not, why didn't the astronauts look happy? That's not a legitimate question. The real questions have been answered. The fact that some people are still asking the same questions is their problem. My goal is not to convince you. For the most part, you are beyond convincing. From the way you frame your comments, it seems that these theories have become like a religious belief to you. It's fundamentally important to you that you be a part of some "we've got secret knowledge club," and I don't care about that. I do care about the lack of critical thinking in the public sphere, and I try to draw attention to it when I can. Because there used to be a time when cranks were easily spotted. They stood outside at government buildings with their mimeographed copies of their manifestos, or they had a hand-stapled journal in the local author's bin at the half-price bookstore. But now with the internet, the foolish can blend easily amongst the factual. What I do in my videos about the moon landing conspiracy theorists is put light on the errors in their thinking and in the presentation of their supposed evidence. My hope is that this will serve as an example to others so that when they encounter these arguments or see similar tactics in other discussions, that they will be prepared to call bullshit. And that's what this is. It's bullshit. Just because you spray paint it with primary colors doesn't make it any less bullshit. Anyone with a critical eye can see that you've taken every range and selected the maximum, taken every possibility and said it's a fact, and taken every worst case scenario and called it the norm. And the reason you and your followers can't see it is because your egos are too involved and it's blinded you. And we can all see this, at least I can, because when I watch your videos, when I read the discussion threads, and when your followers come to me, how much time is spent discussing your persecution? How much time is spent by you and your fans vilifying your opponents and mocking those who don't agree with you as sheep and puppets that have not been able to break free of their masters like you have and are not part of your secret knowledge club? Far too much. Because it's not about the facts. It's not about the truth. It's about you. And I honestly don't care about you.
That's my job! That's what I do!
Yeah, I usually let this part scroll by, but apparently a lot of you don't read it, because since White's video went up, I've had to screen more offensive comments than ever. Look, I like having a conversation. I don't mind criticism, but I won't tolerate racist or any other offensive comments directed toward me or anyone else on my threads. I think it's cowardly. If you feel the need to make offensive attacks against people here, make a video response. Show your face so people can see the offensive crap coming out of your mouth. Otherwise, join the conversation and keep that cowardly shit on another channel.
Maybe you came by to congratulate me on last night's victory.